Hello and welcome to Try Talking Sport, hosted by me, Joanne Murphy. You've come to the right place if you're looking for inspiration, encouragement, motivation and a little bit of entertainment. Whether you are an athlete, adventurer, endurance enthusiast or simply have an interest in sport, thanks for tuning in and being part of our adventure. I hope you are all keeping safe from COVID-19 and keeping the bright side out. The sunshine has definitely helped to lift spirits here in the west of Ireland over the past few days, and I've certainly bounced out of bed much brighter with the sight of the sunshine and blue skies. Long may it last. We have had an overwhelming response to the Try Talking Sport live shows over on the Facebook page. They've taken on a life of their own, with our planned 30 minutes of chat and banter being completely thrown out the window when professional athlete and former guest of the podcast, Nikki Bartlett, joined me in the hot seat. There were giggles and gossip galore for 90 minutes. Yes, 90 minutes. Then on Thursday night, Oliver Harkin from Primed Coaching joined me for another great night of chats and crack. Sunday night we had a very special guest with Mike Riley, the voice of Ironman, joining me for a Sunday session, which got a huge reaction. And last night Chris Minturn brought us plenty of insight and inspiration during his 90 minutes on air. The Cork-based athlete kept us enthralled and entertained for the evening. The live series continues every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8:30pm Irish time, with a whole host of guests lined up for chat and crack each week, so be sure to like our Facebook page and get involved in the conversation. Now, have you seen some of the wonderful sporting charity challenges people have been doing over the past few weeks? From the professional athletes to the age groupers taking on challenges in their homes, gardens and local areas. Some that come to mind are Russell Williams from Wales and his Conservatory Ironman, Jan Frodeno with his Try at Home last weekend, both raising funds for various charities. Closer to home here in Galway, Lynn O'Loughlin from Galway Tri Club will run a half marathon this Saturday, pushing one of her 5-year-old triplets around the course she has mapped out within a 2k radius from home to raise funds for tech and tablets for local nursing homes. Lots of people have run marathons and ultramarathons in their homes, finding ways to get their fix of the sport, inspiring and supporting others whilst we remain at home. It's uplifting to see the positivity and efforts of those using their talents to do good for others amidst the situation we all find ourselves in having to stay at home. Speaking of staying at home, have you joined the Zwift community yet? I'm looking forward to jumping on this weekend and seeing how I get on. Now that the fancy turbo is set up, it's time to get the legs pumping and heart thumping. Cycling Ireland had 1,000 riders registered for their session last weekend, which was the largest sporting activity in Ireland. In non-triathlon news, I went baking last weekend. Yes, I know, I jumped on the baking bandwagon, but after 20 years of not touching a baking tin, I was quite impressed with myself and my baked treats. I'm definitely going to need to work on the turbo if I keep the baking up. So now to today's episode with Lucy Gossage, who has had a superb career of triathlon racing. The oncology consultant is a household name in the sport of triathlon with 13 Ironman wins to her name. Yes, 13. Some of those just 2 weeks apart. Lucy worked and raced professionally on a part-time basis for a number of years before taking a break from her job as a cancer doctor to pursue her passion for triathlon full-time for 2.5 years. And with that, she claimed many a top spot of a racing podium. Lucy retired from the sport as a full-time professional at the end of 2018, returning to her work full-time as a cancer doctor. However, that didn't stop her from winning the Patagon Man Extreme Triathlon in December 2018 and the first ever Extreme Tri World Championships at the Norseman last year. She also returned to her spiritual Ironman home at Ironman Wales in 2019 for a final goodbye to a race that she loves and that brings back such fond memories. An incredibly determined, passionate and dedicated athlete and oncology consultant, it is no surprise she has been successful at every turn. Her mindset and focus is strong. In fact, she credits much of her success to her mindset, but she is also a very talented athlete and enjoys the sport of triathlon. With a spirit of adventure, she wants to have fun with what she does in sport, and with that smile and positive attitude, she has captured the hearts of many with her hashtag Doing a Lucy, dancing, smiling and celebrating in style down the finish line of many a race. Enjoy the show. Lucy Gossage, thank you so much for taking the time out from your busy schedule to join me on the podcast today. You have some amount of trophies in your trophy cabinet. How many Ironman races have you won in your professional career?
I think I've won 12 Ironmans and then 2 of the extreme ones. So yeah.
I've called you across the finish line so many times, and you've always come across the finish line laughing, dancing, crying, singing, going absolutely nuts. It's been a pleasure every time to bring you down the finish line. So I totally miss you, even though it was Wales 2019 that I saw you last.
Oh God, I miss it so much, particularly now. Those carefree days seem, they seem a long time ago. I'd love to do it all over again. Brilliant.
Before we go back to talk about your professional career or your career as a professional triathlete, talk to me about what life is like with Lucy Gossage now, because you are an oncology consultant working on the front line through COVID-19 and the coronavirus based in the UK. What's life like at the moment for you?
I think it's really different. So I normally work part-time, but I'm working full-time at the moment just because of coronavirus. Yeah, it's tough. I think I love oncology, but I realised today that I think all the bits that make the emotional side of it manageable are actually taken away at the moment. So we're doing a lot of our clinics over the phone on our own in our offices. So that takes out the kind of working together with people. All the specialist nurses are being dragged to the wards. I think, my normal kind of just the fun bits of life, because we're all isolating or distancing, is taken away. My poor patients are just having, it's tough for everybody, but it's a million times tougher for them. So I think there's quite a lot of emotional burden extra that I'm taking on without the kind of outlets that I normally have. That was my reflection today. I wake up feeling quite flat, and I was like, why am I so flat? And I think that's why it's tougher at the moment. But we will get through it. And the sun's shining now, and I've been out for a bike ride, and life could definitely be worse.
It could, and it could be better. But Lucy, how did you get into oncology in the first place?
Oncology is not a depressing place. Like, I think that came across like it's really sad, and it sometimes is sad to work in, but actually it's incredibly life affirming. And I definitely think working in oncology actually made me a better triathlete when I went back to work. How did I get into it? I did my junior doctor years, and then I did my kind of postgrad exams, and then you start to think about what you're specialising in. And I just thought about all the patients that I'd remembered, and they all had cancer. So then I thought, well, I'll apply for a junior doctor oncology job and see if I like it. And then there was actually a more senior job that came out, and I ended up getting it. So it was a bit of a gamble because I hadn't done it before, but luckily I do absolutely love it. And as I say, normally it's incredibly uplifting, but right now I think it's much more challenging.
And I know that in 2019, when you had decided in 2018 that you were going to stop your career as a professional triathlete and go back to being a cancer doctor full time. But I do know that for that final race that you did do, the Ironman Wales in 2019, you said you were done with it in 2018, but you did come back to us in 2019. And it was 2 of your patients who inspired you to take that leap of faith and go back to Tenby. Tell me about that.
Oh yeah, and I'm so glad I did. I just remember I was just having, my heart was wanted to go, and I just remember, I'd said I'd retired. I said I wasn't going to go back in 2018, and then I just went and did this ward round, and there were 2 guys, and one of them couldn't move his legs, and he was only 17, and another guy was a footballer, and he was about to lose his leg, and I was just like, what am I doing? Of course I'm going to go back. But what's really cool actually is the younger guy has just finished his treatment, and I didn't know that obviously I didn't tell them any of this. I didn't know that he knew anything about me other than that I was his doctor. And when he finished, he came into clinic with this book with his present, and I opened it, and it was Epic Runs of the World. And so he'd obviously somehow found out that he loved adventures, and he put this note. It was so moving, and he said, "Thank you for helping me reach my finish line." And I was just like, oh, that was he had no idea how much he'd inspired me and enabled me to finish my career the way that I wanted to. So yeah, that was really moving.
You've had an incredible career as a professional triathlete, Lucy. I mean, I know a lot of the results that you have, but I looked today on your website and looked through the results that you have, and it's just like first the whole way. Where did that come from?
Oh, it still feels like it was a different person. It's kind of it all started as a drunken dare. I still, I lined up all my all my trophies when I've just bought a house, and I
hang on, you have to go back and explain to people about the drunken dare there now, because you just glossed over that very nicely. Tell us more about this drunken dare, because if I do recall, you did tell me the story on stage at Ironman Bolton in 2013.
Yeah, so my whole career was an accident. So it was a drunken dare, and I was with a guy for a long time. We bought a flat and things, and we started having problems. So a friend said, "Why don't you do a triathlon as a challenge?" So I entered the London Triathlon, and bought a bike and did it and loved it. And then the week after, we broke up. And the next day, I was a week later, whenever I was teaching some medical students on the ward, and they knew that I'd done the triathlon. And they told me about a friend who'd just done an Ironman, and I was like, "What's an Ironman?" And they told me, and I was like, "What? That's impossible." And then I went out with some friends to a nightclub and got quite drunk. I was like, if I'm single on New Year's Day, I'm going to do an Ironman. And then I was in Scotland, and New Year's Eve, I met this guy who'd done an Ironman. I think he'd done Roth, actually. And he was like, it was amazing. So I was like, this is fate. In my drunken haze, I'm so going to do an Ironman. So then on the 2nd of January, I was back in Nottingham. I went to David Lloyd to the gym, and I started the treadmill. I said, if you can run a half marathon, you're going to do this Ironman. So I pressed go and fell off, 13.1 miles later. And then I went home and I signed up for Ironman UK. Yeah, I downloaded a free training plan off the internet. And all I did was swim and bike and run. So I think, I'm not sure if I could swim front. I don't think I could do more than 1 length front crawl at that time, but I do 1 length front crawl, 1 length breaststroke. So, but I just go to the pool and I just swim. I didn't do intervals. I didn't join a club. And Ironman Geek, the guy in Scotland, I called him Ironman Geek because he used to come and stay every now and then. And he'd always be like, he was so geeky. He's a really good friend, but he was so geeky. And I remember him one day lying me down on the floor and putting his heart rate monitor around me. I'm like, oh, you need to find out your resting heart rate. I was like, what are you talking about? He'd be like, you can't just go and sit on an exercise bike. And I'd be like, well, that's all I'm doing in an Ironman, riding a bike. And so I actually found my training diary from that time. Training diary. It was a diary where I wrote down what I'd done. And it'd be things like an hour on the exercise bike, an hour of doubles tennis.
Well, that's good cross-training for Ironman, I guess, really, isn't it?
It was like bricks without realising it. And then I'd do bonkers things. I'd go for a long run in the morning. All my long runs were hungover on a Sunday morning. And then I'd go and play a squash match in the afternoon. And I think naivety actually was probably really helpful. So I didn't have a Garmin or anything. I used to rip a page out the A to Z, the car thing, and highlight a route. And then I just, every junction I'd stop to work out where. And I wish I'd had a Garmin, because I used to go and do epic rides in the Peak District. And obviously I was a lot slower than I would be now. So they must have been 8-hour rides. But I was just so naive. I didn't know that probably wasn't what most people did. And I think that probably, paid dividends in the long run. Naivety can get you a long way.
Naivety and drunkenness.
And drunkenness and a love for it, I guess.
I'm going to have to ask now, because I know people will ask me, what's your favourite tipple? Your favourite alcoholic beverage?
Oh, it changes. Right now it's Prosecco. But back in the day, I was an aftershock and alco-pop girl.
Oh, mother of God.
So at the time that I entered Ironman, it was probably after several alco-pops and then moving on to the aftershocks.
So what year did you do your very first Ironman then?
2006.
And then what was the catalyst to encourage you to go professional, or what were the results that you were seeing that led you to going professional?
So I did that as a one-off. It was literally just a one-off challenge. And then I did it. I felt like it was signed up for the impossible. I was still, no finish line will beat that. And lots have come close, but it was just such an incredible feeling. And then I went back to work, and I kind of thought that was it, because it was just a challenge. And then luckily there was a guy that I was working with who'd just joined the Tri Club in Nottingham, and he persuaded me to join. And I was like, they're so geeky. It's not going to be for me. But luckily they were a bunch of pissheads as well. So so that's how I started to get good. Well, I fell in love with it really, because I joined the club and it was just really fun. I'd go and train after work, and then we'd all go to the pub for a pint, and it was so sociable. And then how I got good was I moved to Cambridge to start a research PhD. So I was working as an oncology trainee doctor, the level below consultant, and then you kind of have to do a research PhD, and I moved to Cambridge for the wrong reasons, because it was, it was a prestigious place to go, and I hated it. Absolutely hated the first year of it. Was completely unsupported. So then I started to train rather than just exercise, and I think that was how I got good. It kind of training became more important, because I felt like I wasn't doing much in my working life. 2009 I moved to Cambridge, and then 2009 and 10 I got pretty good as an age grouper. Went to Kona in 2010 as an age grouper, and I think I was fourth in my age group, an eighth overall or something. And then 2011 I got my pro license, but I was still working full time. But I think I realised then that I could have a nice time and win most stuff as an age group, or I could challenge myself. And then the end of 2011 I went part-time at work, so that I could balance the two a bit better. And then when I finished my PhD in 2014, I had 2.5 years as a full-time athlete. So I only ever had 2.5 years as a full-time athlete.
So 2.5 years as a professional athlete. What was the highlight of that career?
2.5 years as a full-time athlete. Oh, I don't know. I think I did a lot of travelling. I think the best bit actually was going to... So I handed in my PhD on the 31st of March. And that day I flew to South Africa for Ironman South Africa. And I actually had 4 weeks out there. And I just remember, like, this is such a cool way to start my pro career. And then I was back for about a week and a half, and then I went to Lanzarote and did the Ironman there. And those kind of 8 weeks or whatever were pretty special, because I just felt like I was living the dream of the dream that I'd always hoped to live as a pro triathlete. Because
you had been doing it part-time, like you'd been working part-time as a doctor and part-time triathlete for a while before going full-time into the sport.
Yeah, end of 2011 I went part-time, and then 2012-13 I raced professionally. Started doing quite well. Got some sponsors, particularly Erdinger came on board. And then when I finished my PhD, I realised it was now or never. Like, I didn't. And originally I just had 1 year out. I negotiated 1 year out of work, but it grew to 2.5. I was very lucky that the hospital supported it. It did take quite a lot of negotiation, gave me some good negotiation skills.
In terms of the events that you've done outside of Ironman, what are the races that bring back the best memories for you?
So I mean, I've done later in my career. I think when I went back to work in 2016, at the end of 2016, I then every race was a bonus, and it was purely just because I loved it. And I think that's partly why I carried on doing so well. But I did Patagon, which was just incredible in Patagonia. I did Norseman last year. Yeah, I think Patagon was probably one of the highlights outside of the Ironman, because it was just the start. It was just such an adventure. So I think everyone should try an extreme triathlon. I mean, Ironman's great, but it's so different to these extreme ones, which are tiny little races. You have your support crew who are part of your team. Patagon, you jump off a ferry when the sun's just coming up, you swim back. It was just absolutely stunning. And then the runs are generally really hilly. They're like on trails. The whole Patagon Man race is point to point. So it's pretty cool that you travel from this fjord and you end up at you cross the mountains, and then you end up 200k away. You finish an Ironman, there's thousands of people cheering you, and along the way and Patagon, you're literally just on your own in the middle. Not racing against anyone, because you can't see anyone. It's so different. It's like you versus the elements. It's really cool. Ironman's cool as well, but I think extreme triathlons are worth a punt, definitely.
And the Norseman, impossible almost to get into it, and also impossible almost to finish it. There's not many people can claim to have finished the Norseman.
Yeah, I mean, that was really cool. So that was definitely a retirement. I wasn't training as a full-time athlete, as a professional athlete last year. I did enough training to race it. I mean, I raced reasonably well, but I wasn't anywhere near as good as I used to be. But that was spectacular as well. I have to go back and ride that bike course and stop and start and take some photos, because you just can't soak it in when you're racing. And we were lucky because it was really hot as well. So we definitely got the best of Norseman.
In the live chats we were having the other day with Nikki and with Oliver, Laura Siddle was actually commenting on them as well, and we were having the question over what was the better race, Wales or Lanzarote.
Wales, 100%. Why? No doubt about it.
Why?
The crowds, the I mean, Wales is, I just love Wales so much. Lanzarote, it always feels like it's, I mean, it's an iconic race, but it always feels like it's a bit of a battle. But Wales is just pure, Tenby is just my happy place. And yeah, I'd go back there every year if I could.
It's amazing. And even thinking about it yesterday, when we were chatting about it, even the Welsh national anthem playing in that amphitheatre and the noise and the crowd, the spectators lining.
Oh, you've got shivers down my spine.
Yeah, it's just, it's amazing. And then that finish line up along the Esplanade, it does bring back very, very good memories. That was my first ever full distance race to announce back in 2012.
Well, it's a good one to start your career with, isn't it?
And actually, I remember in 2013 that you won the Ironman UK in Bolton, and Scott Edley, you had decided that you were going to go to Wales, and he was humming and hawing as to whether to go or not, and you told him to go, and he ended up actually winning Wales.
Yeah. He credited me when he won Wales. Yeah.
Lucy, you've also been to Kona quite a few times as well. You had a bit of a bumpy ride to get there with a broken collarbone a number of years ago. Tell me what it was like racing in Kona.
So Kona to me is always a race that Tenby just brings back happy memories. Kona always feels like it's serious and it's tough and it's brutal. And it doesn't suit me, to be honest. If you were to put my worst possible ingredients of a race together, you'd come up with Kona, and exactly the opposite for Tenby. But I'm really proud of my races there. So I went twice as an age grouper, 3 times as a pro. First year as a pro, I had an injury and I walked 21 miles of the marathon. I was the last pro to finish. I finished at exactly the same time as my first ever Ironman, but I did still finish. Most people probably wouldn't have done. And then the second year I came 10th. And then the third year I broke my collarbone 8 weeks before it. And I was going back to work 2 weeks after it. So it was I thought it was my last pro race. I was wrong. But so I broke my collarbone 8 weeks before it and I came 9th, which shows the mental power of, passion, I guess.
2 things. One is, how in God's name did you walk the 21 miles of the marathon?
Do you know what, Joe? I've never DNF'd, and it's probably one of the things I'm most proud of. And I'm not advocating finishing with injuries, but I've had a lot of good days, but I also had a lot of bad days, and I always finished, and I always respected the race. And for me, that's something that I'm probably more proud of that than I am of all the ones that I won. I'm proud of how I dealt with it, to be honest. I just, I met Magnus Backstead. I walked the last kind of 8 to 10 miles with him. So that was quite nice. Yeah, I just kind of was, obviously I was gutted and I felt like I let people down a bit because it was my first year. I felt like I let myself down. I was like, maybe I should just go back to work. This pro thing's not going to work out. But I think learning from failure is probably one of the biggest things that I've taken from my tri career, and that was probably it felt like a big failure to me. Even though it was an injury, it felt like a big failure, and coming back from that has shaped me and changed me as a person, I think.
The other thing I want to ask you about, Lucy, is 8 weeks out from Kona, and obviously it's hard enough to get to the finish line of an Ironman race, never mind qualify for Kona. And at that time, I think you had to, it wasn't just an automatic qualification. When you won the race, you had to generate points by racing. Yeah. So it was a much more long drawn out process to qualify for Kona at the time. The injury that you got 8 weeks out from the race, how did you prepare physically and mentally during that time to get to the start line?
Yeah, it was, I think the hardest thing was not knowing whether I could race or not. Because it was pretty much exactly 8 weeks. And then I had it operated on, and then it was 7 weeks. And obviously you can't do much straight after the surgery. But I was trying, and I was doing these crazy turbo sessions. And I think it's probably not dissimilar to most pros now, actually, because I was putting myself through it, thinking this is all pointless. I'm not going to be able to race. Why don't I just go and sit on the sofa or go for a walk? Which I guess it's quite similar to everyone now who's carrying on training, not knowing when they're going to be able to race. I did some crazy stuff. I looked at my training diary. I was a nutter, but I have no regrets because I was just so. I think when I made the decision that I was going to give it everything, then to get there. And it did actually take the pressure off. like I did rock up at Kona with no pressure, no one expected anything. And I think that was a big part of how I managed to do well, actually.
You won Bolton so many times and Wales so many times, and you were a champion so many times that there must have been an enormous amount of pressure on you every time you started a race.
People always said that, but I think the time I felt pressure was when I became a name in inverted commas and I was a full-time athlete. But as soon as I went back to work, so that was the end of 2016. So I think I won 8 Ironman races, proper Ironmans, after going back to work. Can't remember exactly, but as soon as I went back to work, in my head, that took all the pressure off. So people could say whatever they wanted, but I knew that, half the week I was working as an oncologist. And to me, that just meant, A, what does it matter? It's just a race. B, I'm doing it because I love it. I don't need the money. I don't need it. I don't need the results. I've got something else that makes my life worthwhile. And C, whenever anyone said, Lucy's probably going to win it, I was like, well, whatever, I'm an oncologist. And so for me, it took all the pressure off. And I remember 2018, I remember it so clearly, driving up to Wales, and I'd done my final oncology exams on the Wednesday. So it was 6 hours of exams, and the race was on the Sunday. And the Thursday, I woke up, I was like, oh my God, I haven't got anything ready. I've got this Ironman. But I was talking to a friend driving up there. I was like, I just feel like I feel sorry for the other pros, because for them it's so important, and for me it's just fun. And then I went and had an amazing race. So I think it took all the pressure off.
But Lucy, what about dealing with the pressures at work as well? Because you're now in a double pressurised environment. You've got the pressures at work and the pressures of Ironman racing. Or was Ironman racing the release from work?
Oh no, Ironman was the release, I think. So I think that when I was doing my exams, that was really hard, because when I was training, I felt like I wanted to be working, because I was working and trying to study and trying to train. And I do remember I was very, very conflicted, because when I was training, I felt like I wanted to be revising, and when I was revising, I wanted to be training. But actually, I think generally the two kind of counterbalance each other quite well, because exercise, and I realise this now that I've stopped racing professionally, exercise is it's like my safety net, is my mental, what's the phrase? It's the way that, yesterday I left work and it was just like my mind was buzzing. It had been quite tough, and I rode 90 minutes home just as the sun was setting, and I got back and I was like, life's better again. So it's my way of dealing with things, and I think probably all the training that I was doing just deflected from stresses and things at work.
You mentioned the word counterbalance there, but balance is the word I want to focus on for a minute, because how could you get, I suppose, a balance between your training and life outside of work? I presume that when you were working and then you were training, you didn't have much time for anything else really outside of that.
So when I was doing those exams, I did have to, literally in my diary, schedule social time.
And what was Lucy's social time? Were you back on the aftershock?
No, it would have been like one glass of Prosecco or whatever. But I knew I had to do that, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to get through it. But there's always something else to do. And but generally, I think training, I do enjoy training. You can train with people. I didn't have and I'm enjoying it now, having a bit more time to, being able to say yes to going out to dinner, rather than thinking I have to get up at 5 o'clock to go swimming. I guess that's what changed last year. I wasn't living my life as a professional, so I was still training a lot, but it wasn't the overriding thing in my life. So if something came up, I wouldn't say no. And was much more balanced. And if friends were staying for the weekend, I wouldn't go and hunt for a swimming pool or whatever. Whereas when I was racing professionally, I was very much living my free time around triathlon. So if friends were up for the weekend, I would still go and swim at 4:30 in the afternoon, and I'd just say, sorry, you guys are going to have to entertain yourself for 2 hours. And I would never miss a swim session. And so I was making a lot more sacrifices. But I always think if you know your why, and your why is good enough, then the sacrifices are worthwhile. So I made the choice to carry on racing professionally. I knew that I wanted to do it, and those sacrifices didn't then feel like sacrifices. Whereas last year, I knew that my why was enough to have some cool experiences and really enjoy it, but not enough to sacrifice everything else that was going on in my life.
Do you feel like you've been on a big adventure, Lucy? I mean, is that what it feels like it's been?
It has, but it feels like a dream. And like talking, I guess, because you've been at so many of my finish lines, talking to you actually makes me. And this is probably the worst day because I was feeling quite low when I woke up this morning. It was all just being a bit daunting with coronavirus, and I'm like, well, I just want to do it all over again. It's been just so amazing, and I met so many cool people. And actually, what is quite cool, they have these team time trials on Zwift. And so last week, I got a team together with Nikki and Susie and Lucy Charles and a few others. And actually, my watt bike cut out on the start line, so I ended up riding 3 minutes behind them. But I could still match their watts. And then I was going to do that.
I love the way you just slid that in there. I could still match their watts.
I could. I was very proud.
Good job.
But then last night I was going to do it, but I was stuck at work. But anyway, the point is, I made some really cool friends that I would never have met through, Joe Skipper. I'd never have met Joe Skipper and he's a good friend now. And yeah, all the people like you and Paul and John Levison, and yeah, I've met so many amazing people. And I think now I've got a little bit of a platform as well that means that my charity stuff is kind of going somewhere. So that's nice as well. Yeah, I'd love to do it all again.
And I'm going to jump in and talk about your charity piece as well, because that's something that's very close to your heart. So you have set up your own charity to support your patients and the wider community.
I think exercise is important for everybody. And there's actually quite a lot of evidence that for people living with and after cancer, exercise has lots of benefits, physical as well as psychological, and there's early evidence that it improves outcomes as well. And I met this amazing person, Gemma Hillier-Moses, about 2 years ago, and I'd heard about her, and I thought, I've just got to message her. And she had cancer when she was 24, and she'd set up a charity called Move Charity, which aimed to help young people who have cancer or have had cancer through the power of exercise. And I'd had this idea about trying to get people, like groups of my younger patients, down to parklands, and no one would join me on this mission. And I heard about Gemma, and I was like, I'm going to meet her, get in touch and see if we can have a coffee. And we met and we hit it off. So then we founded 5K Your Way, Move Against Cancer, which is really simple, just a community initiative to encourage anyone living with and after cancer to walk, jog, run or cheer or volunteer at parklands on the last Saturday of every month. And over the last 2 years, we've gone from one group in Nottingham to, I think, 54 groups across the UK and in Ireland, a few in Ireland as well. Obviously, they're all on hold now. But actually, we're using this time now to try and increase our focus on education and awareness of the benefits of exercise and create some useful resources around that. It's just been incredible, and seeing the power of physical activity for people living with and after cancer is, I think as doctors, we effectively, as oncologists, a lot of the drugs we use are effectively poisons, and it's really nice being able to offer something that makes people feel better and probably also improves outcomes and combines that kind of peer support as well. So I'm so passionate about it, and I just hope that we survive coronavirus, because we kind of just got to a really good place in terms of momentum and funding, and I suspect our groups unfortunately are going to be on hold for some time.
How can people get involved in the charity, or how can they get involved to support it?
So we've got 54. So we're 5kyourway.org, at Cancer 5K Your Way on Twitter, 5K Your Way on Instagram. We've got a big Facebook group, 5K Your Way Move Against Cancer. And yeah, as I said, we've got 54 groups. We just employed a full-time person to help us grow and, develop our strategy to launch more groups. So all of that's on hold, but we're using it as an opportunity. And I think once you've proven something works and people like it, it's much easier to get it back up and going again.
The fact that your profile is so high within the sport of triathlon, or even within sport generally. I mean, you're a winner of British Triathlon Federation Long Distance Triathlete of the Year. You're a household name in triathlon in the UK, in Ireland, and beyond it. And I know you're making faces at me now as I watch you as I say that. But you are a household name, so lending your name and your energy and your interest and passion for sport and passion for physical activity is such a huge thing for the organisation, and giving back to the community that has meant so much to you. Even though it's slightly different, it's still about sport, it's still about physical activity.
I think, I think you're right. So I guess 2 points. Firstly, social media is amazing, because without social media, we wouldn't have turned into anything. So the first kind of growth was because of my triathlon network. And secondly, for me, it's really nice because I always felt like being a full-time athlete was quite a selfish thing to do. And I think that's why I kind of enjoyed it a bit more when I went back to work. I didn't feel, it was a bit selfish, but also a bit pointless when that was your whole focus of your life. But actually, by getting the results that I did, I got a little platform, not a massive platform, but a little bit of a platform that means I can turn an idea like 5K Your Way into something. So it's really, for me, it's really nice that the two worlds coincide. And yeah, I remember one of my last races I did as a pro was Challenge Mallorca, Challenge Pagera in 2018. And we'd just started the Nottingham group, maybe we did 3 months before, and I was away for it. And I remember I did the race and I won the race. I was really pleased. And then I got back and saw all the social media from the Nottingham 5K Your Way group. And I realised I was more pleased about the social media than the 5K Your Way group. And that was kind of a really nice insight that, yeah, winning races is cool. And you make a bit of money and it's amazing. But actually you can get probably more satisfaction from other stuff as well.
So you're inspiring quite a lot of people, Lucy, throughout your career, not only in triathlon, but also through the 5K Your Way. But what I'd like to know from you is, who inspires you?
Oh golly, I think one of the people that inspires me most is a friend of mine who had a spinal cord injury about 6 years ago, and she's definitely how she's dealt with that. She's just had a second baby, actually. I always reflect on her. And actually, and this sounds very cheesy, but my patients are probably the people I see. I spoke to someone yesterday and he's 20 and this is his last summer. And, I just cannot imagine dealing with that. And his last summer's got coronavirus. He can't do he can't do what he's wanted to do and what he was planning to do. But seeing how people deal with that, you can't not be inspired. And you can wake up a bit low, but there's so many things to be grateful for.
How do you separate the emotion of dealing with that, the cold face of cancer, and then coming home to normal life? Every time I see you, you're always so happy. You're always so happy. You're always a Duracell bunny. Even when things are going wrong, you still have a smile on your face. How do you keep that positive mindset and that positive attitude when you're dealing potentially with death every day?
Yeah. Yesterday, it was a tough day, and I realised actually a lot. It's tougher at the moment. I said this to Tom, the guy that I live with, just like an hour ago. I think at the moment oncology is tougher because the normal bits that get us through, like the banter with the other doctors that you're working with and the nurses and all of that's gone. And the face-to-face contact with patients. We're doing clinics, nearly all of them over the phone on our own in an office. So you're then taking on that emotional burden on your own. And also you're juggling the fact that all of our patients, no matter what's happening with their cancer, are having a whole load of worse time than they would normally. And, they're not allowed visitors and they're going through it on their own. Their specialist nurses have all been sent to the wards. I'm finding it much more emotionally challenging than I would do normally. But your question wasn't about that. What did I do? I cycled 90 minutes home as the sun was setting and I got back. And, that's the equivalent of drinking a bottle of wine for me. That cleared my head. And it took an hour. I remember like an hour in, I was like, oh, suddenly it's gone. It's like the weight's lifted.
That is the lovely thing about exercise as well. Even in Ireland here, we're only at the moment allowed go within a 2k radius of our homes, but even getting out for a 30-minute walk, it just clears the head and helps you feel so much better, even if it's just to get out for half an hour of a little run around your neighbourhood. Lucy, if you were racing at the moment, how do you think you'd be coping with the restrictions and the lockdowns and the uncertainty around a race season ahead? How do you think you'd be feeling about it?
I think it's a good time for a comeback because no one can no one can swim. I've got commutes every day, so I'm either running or biking into work. So I'm getting pretty fit. So I reckon it's a good time for a comeback.
So no one can swim now. Does that mean, Lucy Gossage, that you can't swim? So you're going to be on an even par with everybody else because they can't swim either? As in general swimming?
Yeah, well, swimming's always a weakness, but given that no one can swim, that would even that out a little bit.
I thought you might have had like a paddling pool out the back and some bungee cords attached to a tree or something to get some swimming in.
Oh, no, couldn't actually swim even if I could. I fell down the stairs a couple of weeks ago. I think I've definitely torn something in my shoulder or broken something. I don't know, but I've done something to it. So, there's no way I could swim anyway.
Lucy, in terms of the support network that you've had over the past number of years, who would have been or what groups would have been the biggest support to you, both across your profession and your personal life?
Well, I've got a really great group of friends from all walks of life, actually. So I've got the sporty ones who, I've been really lucky that two of my best friends have raced the same Ironmans as me, and actually by pure coincidence have ridden behind me for quite a lot of the bike leg, once in Ironman UK and once in Lanzarote. Both of them, I'd said, if you end up anywhere near me, you cannot go ahead of me for 1 second, because I don't want anyone saying that you're getting towed around. But by pure coincidence, Tom in Lanzarote and James in UK ended up riding behind me for quite a lot. So that was, I'm lucky with friends. And my parents have been amazing in terms of traveling and supporting me, and I always feel very, they both infuriate me enormously, but I just feel so lucky that I know whatever I do in life, they'll always be there for me, and they'll always support my decisions, and I don't think everyone's parents do that, and I think I always feel amazingly grateful for that.
And they were always pretty cool on the finish line too. You'd always see your mum on the finish line and she'd always be amazing. She'd be nearly as excited as you coming down the finish.
When I started doing it, none of us was sporty, so none of us got it. And they, they didn't get, mum at first would be like, well done, you're trying really hard. And then I was like, no, I need some, that's not actually that helpful. So then she'd start making stuff up like, you're being caught. And I was like, Mum, you can't just make stuff up. I can't run any harder. But then by the end, both of them, but Mum particularly, because she came to Kona and things on quite a lot of races on her own, and she was world class. And I remember once I did Italy, and I was winning the race. It was 2 weeks after Wales, and Mum was there. Dad was at home. Mum was texting Dad, and Dad was saying what was happening behind, and Mum was running around saying, Tina, the girl, she's 6 minutes behind, or she's 4. Like, they were proper. They were really amazing. So, but I don't think anyone would have got better splits or better, more accurate timing than they were doing. So I think they miss it as well.
Oh, I'm sure they do. And the excitement of it all and the pride of seeing you crossing the finish line. I want to come and talk a little bit about coaching, Lucy, because from what I understand, you're a pretty much self-coached athlete the whole way.
Yeah, I had lots of advisors. So I had a coach when I was getting into it as an age grouper. And then I had another guy, Chris, who helped me very informally helped me for a little bit. And I had loads of advisors and mentors. But I just found for me that, I'm probably uncoachable. I know my own mind. But also, when I was full-time, I liked doing stuff with friends. And for me, it was really important to keep it fun. And I think I knew my body quite well in terms of, I would only have worked if I'd had a coach with me every day, because some days I was so tired and some days I wasn't. And I had to keep it fun. And So if that meant doing slightly different session with friends, then that was, that was how it rolled for me. And then when I went back to work, I did much more on my own. But at the same time, I felt like I never knew what the week was going to be and what the day was going to be. And I think it would have been, I'd have found it really hard to have a plan and have to stick to it. I think a coach would have been useful to me to stop me doing too much. Probably that would have been the biggest benefit. But loads of people say, "Oh, don't you think you could have been better if you had a coach?" And I did well because I loved it, and I managed to keep it fun.
You also did well because you were extremely talented and very strong.
Yeah, but that's my head.
Come on now, Lucy. 12 or 13 Ironman wins. There had to have been some level of phenomenalness about you to be able to do that in such a short period of time. Seriously, when I look at your results, it's like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 the whole way down. It's amazing. I'm like fangirling here. I'm fangirling.
Yeah, my exceptional part, I think, was my mental strength. Like, if you did any testing on me at any point, I would have been distinctly average compared to most of the pros. But I think if you took my brain out and tested it for like stubborn mindedness and blooming persistence, and then I would have come out quite high.
So did you have race day mantras, or did you visualize the races or any of that kind of stuff, or was it just literally, I'm stubborn, I'm going to do this, I'm focused, I'm determined, and this is it, I'm going to go?
No, I did a lot of sports psychology, actually, particularly towards the end of my career. And I've actually just, with the sports psychologist who helped me, we've just made a 6-week video course, Ironman, which takes people through much of the process that I did. So I never faked any of my emotions at races. But I didn't always just fall into that mentality. And there were quite a lot of races where I had to work really hard to get myself into a race day mentality. So I remember Ironman UK 2016, for example, me and a boyfriend had broken up on the Monday. So obviously on the Tuesday, the last thing I felt like doing was racing Ironman UK. And I think it must have been my going for the 4th win. And that took a huge amount of work, like psychology work, to get myself into a mental place where I wanted to race, number one, and was ready to race. So yeah, I worked really hard at psychology, and it made a massive difference. And I think it's something that most people neglect and probably could benefit quite a lot from investing some time in it. And actually, the work I did in sports psychology is helping me now as a doctor, because I know myself a bit more, and I've developed some tactics to get me through, like at the moment, I've got tactics that I can draw on to help me get through whatever life throws at me. If I'm doing a talk or, coronavirus, changing work, and
chatting to Joanne on the podcast.
Anyway, yeah, so Ironmind. If you want to have a look, thinkbelieveperform.co.uk and go to Ironmind. We've had some really good feedback, and it might be something that people could do actually usefully at the moment whilst they're not able to train as much.
Well, there's a lot of talk at the moment about remaining focused during the time of the COVID-19 crisis, not heading to the biscuit tin, not losing your motivation. That's what a lot of people I've spoken to over the past couple of weeks have mentioned. It's all too easy to let everything slide and slip because you've got no goal down the line. And a lot of people are saying, well, we can't swim, so we'll do extra strength and conditioning. But maybe our mindset and psychology is something that we should be spending time on, so that when we come out of it, not only are our bodies fitter and stronger, but our minds are as well.
I have no doubt the sports psychology work I did, I have no doubt that got me through. So 2016, which is when I did the work, kind of end of 15, 16, the bulk of that's when I started to do it. And then 2016, I had so many injuries, and so I did Ironman New Zealand off 2 weeks of running. I was second. Then 5 weeks later, I did Ironman South Africa with a torn Achilles. I was third. Then I didn't run for another 8 weeks or 6 weeks. Then I did Staffs and I won it. Then my boyfriend and I broke up, and then I won Ironman UK 6 days later. And then I broke my collarbone, and then I went to Kona. And that wasn't, that year, anyone like my physio or anyone that would have been like, you shouldn't even be starting these races. But because of that year, and because I did manage to race, even though I hadn't done the training anywhere near what I would have liked to have done, I think that was then what enabled me to carry on racing when I went back to work, because I suddenly realised I knew exactly why I was doing it. So I'd done a lot of work around why I wanted to do it and what my priorities were. And so I really knew my why. And also I knew that I could enjoy racing and I could race well, even if I hadn't done the training that I might have previously said I needed to do. And it also helped me when it came to retirement, like just work through when was the right time for me to retire. People always say, can I coach them? I'm like, no, I'd be a rubbish coach. But I genuinely believe that the sports psychology work I did, so many people could benefit from it if they just took the time to. I'm not saying go to our program. There's, there were books and things, but or go and pay to see. I mean, ideally, go and pay to see someone. But people spend thousands of pounds on bikes and wheels and a carbon bottle cage, and go and invest a little bit of time and effort in psychology, and you'll save so much more time, and you'll be so much happier because of it.
I was going to finish the interview there, but I've one more question to ask you, Lucy. I see a picture behind you on a finish line. Yeah. I'm not going to ask you about that picture specifically, and I am getting a cribs tour of her new house. That looks like Wales. That's the start. That's Gossage Rock in Wales that she's showing me. And I can't see the finish line behind, but it's definitely one of you winning. What I am going to ask you, Lucy, is of all of the races that you've won and the tapes that you've broken as the winner of a race, what is the one that stands out the most for you as the most important or the best win ever?
I think Wales 2018, because it was my last one, and I just I'll well up even now. Like, I just remember I was crying. That race was will always it was special.
Yeah, I think you had us all. I think you had us all crying. She's starting to cry here now, lads. Second time today, she's nearly crying on the podcast.
I'm not normally an emotional wreck. It's just right now.
Maybe we should have done this show over a bottle of Prosecco.
Oh, Joe,
Could you imagine?
I need a wild party.
Okay, maybe we need to get you on the Facebook Lives and you can have a bottle of Prosecco while we're chatting. Now, that would be great fun. Lucy, thank you so much for joining us on the show today and for taking the time out of your very busy schedule dealing with the coronavirus on the front lines. And I wish you every success with all of your work. And I do wish you would come back racing, but I know you probably won't. You were one of my favourite athletes to call down the finish line. I'm totally a fangirl, and it's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Always lovely to chat, and I miss you.
Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget you can get in touch with any feedback or any guest suggestions by emailing me on trytalkingsport@gmail.com. If you get a chance, I really would love a review on Apple Podcasts or on the Try Talking Sport Facebook page. Speaking of Facebook, don't forget to tune in to our live chats on the Try Talking Sport page on Tuesday and Thursday nights at 8:30 p.m. Until next time, wash your hands, stay safe and stay at home.